When it comes to Pixar and their many franchises, we often overlook Cars for many reasons. One that mostly include the second film in that case, but also just the franchise as a whole being different than what we normally associate the studio with. But even though those issues are present, I still look back upon those films fondly as they came out when I was a little boy, especially the first film. Because overall, Cars has actually become an underrated classic in our time that has such a charming story that is to be appreciated today, especially within the Disney parks itself, with lands like Cars Land being one of the best designed places that they do have that was based upon the setting of this very film. And at the very least, that is something people can appreciate with what John Lasseter himself brought when he was still part of Pixar at this very time. And this film truly feels like that passion he had for cars brought to life with various references to the vehicles that they very made and the racers that they actually put into the film. A true celebration of the automobile that many kids actually grow up admiring. And today with this very video, I just wanted to pay tribute to the good side of Cars and why it is now an underrated classic in my opinion. One that was just bogged down by a terrible sequel but followed up by an actual decent one that chronicles the racing journey of one hotshot car that we all know in Lightning McQueen. Because although Lightning McQueen might not have the same emotional journey as many other Pixar characters have that most actually would associate with, he still does have a lot of heart and growth that makes his entire journey unique and alright in his own way. One that actually learned and succeeds in the very end. And it's all done through this unique use of Radiator Springs and these small towns that popped up across America during the development of the interstate that we use today, where this country and many parts of the world still primarily runs on cars to get us where we need to go. And when you look at that from this angle, then you can truly respect Cars for what it is despite it lacking from what you would usually expect. Just something that never really deserved the hate for what it was, except 2 in this case, which is honestly one of the worst sequels ever created. But another great problem that actually plagues Cars itself that I want to get out of the way before focusing on the positives of this very movie is the world itself. The world building that most people hate about this franchise. Because if you put it into context of just cars and racing in that particular story, then you can probably actually agree with that with ignoring those important issues of their existence. But when you extend that to a franchise and a broader world like what the second film did, then you kind of deteriorate your feelings about cars in general and the way the world works, maybe even feeling it's conceptually bad in practice. Because honestly, how would you even expect any of these cars or planes or whatever to actually live in this world? How did they even create this world in the first place? Without the elements of humanoids existing, none of this should actually make any sense, because how can any of them have any emotion if they are designed the way that you would normally think of cars or any vehicular transport? Nothing in this world actually really exists except for the machines we create to move, so how's that actually make any sense or work at all? You just can't expect your own audience to agree with that when you put those questions forward, and it's a major reason why people just generally don't like this compared to the other stories, even if they do have elements that don't generally make sense, but still retain more humanoid ones along the way that actually makes you agree with their own decisions that mirror our own. But yet again, understanding what this movie specifically means and nothing else, then you can instead truly agree about why it was actually designed this way with its very story. It makes sense considering the topic of racing would actually focus on that and only that, and why this movie actually wouldn't work in another form, say if you had a humanoid element to it in a racing car, if that actually ever made sense. It just doesn't make sense because the cars are the main driving force for the story. Just like how Cars 2 itself just doesn't work in any type of form at all regardless of the broken world of Cars and its thematic elements. But just here and now, Cars actually does work for what it wants to tell with a well-developed story of Lightning McQueen himself, beginning as this young hotshot rookie racer who seeks the big times and winning the Piston Cup. We see here he's competing against 7-time champion Strip, who is retiring, and his ultimate rival and Pixar's most perfect villain with Chick Hicks, a cunning green race car voiced by the one and only Michael Keaton. Where this part of the movie is where we learned how skilled Lightning is as an upcoming racer, but also just very arrogant, whereas overconfidence is truly his weakness, never caring about his crew or going to any pit stops because he just thought he could make it without him, which we also learned isn't the case, where he settles for a tie at the end of this race. Just how we see him value himself rather than others around him that actually makes this all work, because as we all know, teamwork does make a dream work, but he doesn't actually value that at all. And even after that, we see him continue his attitude where his crew actually virtually quits because of how careless he was and not needing their help. Where yes, he is likable in the eyes of the public and the media for his go-getter attitude, but truly unlikable for the person or car he really is in this sense. It really sets up a lot for his journey to be discovered, trying to actually live big in the spotlight for the big leagues with the prized Dynaco sponsorship away from what he has with Rusty's for the poor man, something that devalues his image as a racer. How we just see instead, in his personality, he seeks to enrich himself with the fame and glory and not for what the sport really is and what we would soon find out. Because the main heart of this movie is truly to value others and those around you, as what we learned when he gets trapped in Radiator Springs, because of how constantly he pushes others like Mac to make it to his own goal, like any racing car would to try to push to the finish line without taking the journey to actually get there, undervaluing anything that is not good for his own image or standard as a racer. And as a result, he truly gets lost after Mac dries off because he had been sleep deprived, which caused him to panic and get trapped into the town, damaging the town's road and virtually being impounded where the world actually wonders where he had been. This then sets him up on his journey in Radiator Springs, forced to actually fix the road much to the ire of Doc Hudson, the local judge who seems to have a hatred for race cars and wanting them gone at first sight, but convinced otherwise by Sally, who does have a passion for the town that he finds himself in. And this is all where the heart of the movie actually lies in, with his adventures in the small town of Radiator Springs when he has to repave the road, where initially with what we see in the movie, he just wants to get out at any cost, but manages to actually learn something along the way about the cars he is actually surrounded by, especially Doc, played by the late Paul Newman, accomplished actor and race car enthusiast who really brought the feeling of one who had years of experience in their prior life before beginning something new with the one here with Lightning McQueen. And it's an element the other movies sorely lack, not about having Doc, of course, for the obvious reasons, but just having the heart of Radiator Springs that plays into the movie's story, where it truly has become a huge focal point in most of Cars media, especially with what Cars Land itself actually brought in being literally Radiator Springs itself. But the thing to get most about this scene is how he tries but fails each time to get out of the city constantly, thinking about the Dynaco sponsorship and nothing else in life that's actually being offered in front of him, but slowly looking at it the more he actually fails. I like it because it still continues this slow process for our main character to develop and grow, while retaining some of the traits he had at the beginning as a racer, constantly thinking about reaching his goal, but seeing more to life than just seeing what is just in front. Like Mater using his rear view mirrors and such, and learning more about Doc, knowing about racing that Lightning himself constantly fails at in this very track. Just how he learns through this slow process to actually have fun with others like Mater and finally get to know them like Sally, that he should stop and think about what they feel around them rather than what McQueen feeling for himself. And this is represented by the drive both of them take, where he gets to see the view from above, near the abandoned wheel well that used to populate the area. We learn more about Sally, who actually was an attorney before in Los Angeles, living the high fast life similar to McQueen in a way that it gets you more money obviously than what you would think others would, like in Radiator Springs, do living the simple life, realizing that it never actually gave her any meaning, any happiness for what material living she actually had, instead falling in love with the simple small town America in the beauty of the Cadillac mountain range, where we have this amazing view looking above Radiator Springs, where he truly learns to appreciate what they have and how life constantly passes by them with the interstate towards the right, representing what actually happened around the country as interstates started to pop up across the nation, getting us to our destinations much faster. It's where you truly appreciate what the movie actually really means, where the film truly came out of passion of those who love cars and the roads that they move across, where it really shows us the effects of what we lose when we try to build something better in the process, that we lose sight of the things that surround us like Radiator Springs that causes the town to go virtually extinct in a way, breaking the hearts of those who actually live there, where McQueen truly starts to realize that slowing down is a nice thing to actually do, instead of living in the fast lane in the moment where you can miss what life actually has to offer. And it's why the movie actually worked really well when it came down to it. It's just nice to actually see how he really starts to have fun with those he actually met, and finally appreciates an important aspect to life that many people like him actually miss, realizing the value of others and who they actually really are, just like Doc himself, who was actually the fabulous Hudson Hornet, the famed racer who won many races in his time and won 3 Piston Cups, much to the praise of McQueen. It's where he starts to actually admire him more, but how he continually rejects that side of his life because of what it brought to him, that they themselves actually rejected him when he had his crash, which would echo in the third film itself when McQueen actually experiences that part and learns more in his journey from this very point, that he felt that there was just much more to actually give to society, but society actually didn't want that and moved on to a new generation without any care. Just like what he did at the beginning, not caring about others, where because of that, he really just wanted him gone because of how he needs to move on from that point in his life. It's a moment where, in his own way, he too actually needs to grow from its past, just like Lightning, to learn to accept other racing cars from different generations and what they actually represent from the failure of his own past. But of course, in that process, Lightning actually proves himself to what he did and trying to grow to give a new life to the town once again by actually helping them out individually and offering to use each of their services with the newly repaved road. We then get to see him give way to have Radiator Springs fully lit up once again, just like it was in its heyday, which makes Sally so grateful as she never got the chance to see it when they actually took her in, that he finally took time to slow down and appreciate small town America for what it really brought to others until the media somehow actually finds him again, pressing him to go back to Cali to actually finish the race. And it's the moment that actually makes him realize more than what he was from before, where Sally just encourages him to go back to find out what he was really looking for, where he really does have doubts in his mind about this very moment. Because at the beginning, it was all about himself and the importance that he actually get the prize Dynaco sponsorship and ticket to fame. But hanging out with Sally and the rest of Radiator Springs actually showed him much more than that to him. Learning to actually live and the meaning of what cars actually brings us that connects us closer to the world in so many ways. Ones that can either be big or small, with the vast open playground of nature itself. A moment where Doc also realizes what he had done, where Sally questions him calling them down here as a decision that was best for himself, similar to what McQueen had as a racer in his own way at the beginning, connecting them in more ways than one in separate eras. How we already knew and saw him explain earlier that he had a lot left to give, but was just casted out too early, and how Lightning actually has more to be given in that. We then see Lightning struggle at first due to its experiences, not really thinking he could be the same car he was at the beginning, but then transforms when it is revealed that Doc actually came all the way to California to really help him, or to help both of them in the end by bringing Radiator Springs to him. And with his friends back, he also learns to incorporate their moves into racing against Chick Hicks, demonstrating his true growth as a character throughout the film, especially doing the one that Doc actually showed him that made him truly proud as a mentor to him. The one that actually encouraged him later, where we saw him actually give up his win to save another race car who actually suffered a crash similar to Doc's. This is probably the most important moment in the film because of how he actually gave up to save another, to really value others in life rather than to just live it for himself, and learning from Doc of how cars like Strip have a lot left to give, earning the public's praise in the end, compared to the shame Chick got for unethically winning the race, where he may have won the battle in this moment for the Piston Cup, but he surely lost the war for fame that actually comes with it. And in the end, it still turns out the Lightning gets the chance to have the Dynaco sponsorship instead, but still turns it down after learning to value what he had in the Rusty's boys that gave him his big chance in the first place, and living with Radiator Springs as well as we see in the end. This is where he decides that his headquarters would be the town itself, really giving new life to the area by putting them back on the map with other racers joining in and new sets of tourists that they actually needed, ending the film perfectly. Cars is truly a classic movie that really values the importance of the automobile and the people who built it, including the towns it created that most actually live off in its own existence, ones that we tend to forget. The most important message that the film actually offers that many actually overlook due to the overall franchise, that we actually learn to appreciate due to what it actually builds in our lives if we really just seek to look around rather than sticking in front. I truly wish there was more to say about this, but sadly I'm not really a car expert to go more into detail and just truly appreciate what was already provided. It's just that I hope that more people actually tend to appreciate it for being a classic and a good tribute to the world of cars itself and racing. I mean, sure, with the expense of the franchise and especially the sequel, we do tend to question a lot of the logic and flaws and don't really think it conceptually works, but overall it still offers a charming experience to the world that we are all familiar with in daily life, where its appreciation for it would surely grow. Not that I personally think cars should be the means of transportation for society in that regard in daily life, but just for the freedom and exhilaration that the world actually has to offer. And with that said, I'm all done, so goodbye.